My mother, who taught Latin and French, was the exacting engine of our family's life. She had standards, one of which was how things looked. My dad was a teacher of geography and sociology and an admired calligrapher. In the family, he was the steadying influence who possessed the quiet force of gravity. I was easily drawn to his interests, including fossils, photography, trains, and travel. I called him Champ. He called me Sammy. We were friends. It's always been easy to identify my dad's influence. He taught me how to photograph. It took me decades to comprehend my mother's influence. She taught me what to photograph.
Welcome to the Crit House. I'm Jeff Larson. Sam Abell is one of our great living photographers. He has been working for a couple of years now on a 2-volume retrospective of his life's work, and he has been kind enough to talk to us on the Crit House about the book, the process, and his life's work. This is episode 2 of that conversation. I hope you enjoy it.
Jeff, you and I have talked about aha moments, and there's an aha moment, a distinct light bulb moment. 1 year ago, this was a brick of a book that I was unhappy with. It was 400 pages. Those books are unapproachable and unreadable, and they're sort of dead on arrival. And I was unhappy about that. Why was it 400 pages? It was 400 pages because I don't believe that color photographs can coexist on one spread. So in my book, in this book, the color photographs are one per spread. Each photograph faces a blank page. And there are reasons for that. And the main reason is color clashes. Mm-hmm. And I didn't want that. I wanted people to be able to dwell on each photograph in an uncomplicated and clarified way. So one picture per spread. Well, that makes a 200 picture book, 400 pages.
Right.
So I was lamenting this to Karen Pasilis, collaborator on this book and producer of this book. And she said, Sam, have you ever thought about breaking the book into 2 volumes? You've done it before, you did it in college. And your career breaks into 2 clean, distinct eras. And as soon as she said it, I visualized a 2-volume slipcase book. She was right in every respect. She was right mechanically. It would be 2 manageable books. She was right chronologically. She was right artistically. She was right in terms of technology. 1 volume analog, the other digital. 1 volume geographic, the other independent. In every respect, it was a brilliant idea, a true aha moment. And I credit Karen with that insight. That it was transformative. I was once again happy to be working on this book.
And I think it was the right decision. I mean, certainly, again, from what I've seen on the PDF, not having a physical copy of it, what did you learn from looking back at volume 1? Or did you? Is there anything, I mean, and that can be either personal or photographic?
Well, at the end of that book, when I'm standing with the Emperor of Japan, just the 2 of us, I'm standing there and he greets me and he's by name and asks if I'm happy. And I said, yes, Your Majesty, I'm happy. And in that moment, as I said, I declared my retirement from National Geographic. I wanted to do it in a singular moment. And this was extremely singular. It was a peak. In the book, I write about ending a way of life, photographic life and personal life, that began in 1970. So 30 years have passed. And I declare in the text of the book that for those years, I am grateful. During them, I became myself as a photographer and a person. So I would say about that first book that I became myself as a photographer. I was able to live a life of continuous photography. And I was in an environment together with my peers at National Geographic that was photography rich. We talked about photography. We talked about photographers. We talked about the history of photography. We talked about our aspirations. It was a 30-year conversation about photography, fed by new work all the time. And I was trying to hone myself. I needed to produce photographs for National Geographic that were publishable. That wasn't easy. That took a lot. But at the same time, I never forgot Dorothea Lange. I never forgot Walker Evans. I never forgot Bruce Davidson. And I was thinking about my peers like Eugene Richards and others who were doing meaningful work in their lives and in their careers. And I aspired to do the same. I also took a sabbatical during those years that was transformative. And that's a kind of a whole story about the power of sabbaticals to gain enlightenment about yourself, which is what I did on my sabbatical. And I would just say no one at National Geographic took sabbaticals, but I took a 3-month sabbatical to look at 7 years worth of film, 7 National Geographic years. And what I was looking for was myself. I was trying to find myself in my work before it was too late. That first volume to me is rich in learning, rich in growth, and I think accomplishment. I say that because some people I think will find in volume 1 work that they might think as peak Sam Abell. That wouldn't surprise me. I personally think the peak is still ahead of me. I think that I'm working now because of both volume 1 and volume 2 being within me. And I draw on everything that I've learned when I make a picture today. My best work is still ahead of me.
You know, it's an interesting thing to go beyond just volume 1 and volume 2, but to a certain extent, as you look forward, finishing this and getting it out into the world would free you up to be able to do that next work that allows you to sort of say, okay, that's done. Now I can do my next step.
That is so interesting to hear because I think that when this book is done, I would go back into my archive and do a book on Japan or
Mm.
on America. But what you're suggesting is a break from the past. And the very intriguing idea, I had not thought about an absolutely fresh body of work proving that my best work is still ahead of me.
It's kind of exciting if you think about it, right? I mean, so because we have these 2 volumes that are coming out that we're all going to relish and we're all going to value, and we're going to have that piece of Sam Abell, and then you can go out and be whoever Sam Abell is now, and
Yeah,
who that is.
I'm seeing the title of this already. New work.
New work. I love it. So just one last piece on and we talk about volume 1. Are all of the images that are in volume 1 were they published in National Geographic, or are they representative of the years?
Representative of the years. I haven't broken down how many are published photographs published in National Geographic, but I would say I'll just grab uh, a number and say half. But you're tempting me to count now. The people that have seen my work in National Geographic are going to see some familiar work, but they're going to be very, I think, taken up with photographs that never were published. Many people think that the best photograph, including this has been shown in Crit House and My Five, people have named the branding picture as
Yes.
the most influential picture. or one of the most influential pictures of their careers. Well, the branding was never published by National Geographic.
Oh, I don't think I knew that. Oh, that's interesting. How did people come to that image if it wasn't in Nat Geo?
When it wasn't published, I declared silently that I would make a campaign to make that picture known.
Well, consider it a success.
It's not over, that campaign, but it's made that photograph known.
So it was interesting to me, and this will be the last thing we'll say about volume one before we move on to the next. When you had sent me the PDF of the book, and I was reading, I was on an airplane coming from Nebraska back home to Boston, and I had the book out in front of me that I was reading, which is Larry McMurtry's Lonesome Dove. And it was sitting on the fold down tray, and I came to that image on my phone because I was looking at your PDF on my little tiny phone, which is the worst way to look at it. And I was like, that was an image from Lonesome Dove for me. It was just so I took a little picture of it with the two next to each other. It was a great moment for me because I was enraptured by volume one of your book at the time that I was reading Larry McMurtry.
McMurtry, by the way, was a major book guy. The New York Times book review section has a photograph in tribute to Larry McMurtry. The cover photograph of that particular issue is him kneeling down deep in the stacks of a library as a young man, enraptured with a book, not sitting at a desk, not in bed or on an airplane or something, but squatting down or kneeling down in the stack somewhere, immersed in a book. He was a great bookman.
Well, as are you, as I can see.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Sam, what a pleasant conversation in episode 2. Thanks for doing that. And so part of what we're going to do in this series is to have our participants recommend a book that our viewers can consider and look at. And so you'll have the opportunity to talk about 3 different books. What is your first recommendation to our viewers?
The first book I would like to recommend is a one-of-a-kind, never-to-be-repeated book called The RFK Funeral Train by Paul Fusco, I think a Magnum photographer at the time. It chronicles the train trip of RFK's body from New York City, where there was a memorial service, to Washington, where there was internment. Paul Fusco stood on the caboose of the train and photographed Americans saluting, waving flags, solemnly standing, and signifying in every way that they could their sorrow at what was in front of them, at what was passing by slowly, the funeral train. Here is the cover picture. It catches the sentiment of the day and of the feeling. Here's one of my favorite photographs. It's one family lined up by height, as I say, solemnly watching the dignified train, the sorrowful train as it passes by. So as an example, in terms of book making and book creation, it's an example of a photographer who probably did not have a book in mind, but who himself was emotionally moved by what he was seeing, not what the people were seeing, but what he was seeing.
Yeah.
And from that came this book. And I think he was not thinking about a book. So it's an example of a book that rises up from one day of work. And it's a book for the ages.
Well, I thank you for the recommendation, and thanks for the conversation in episode 2. Looking forward to episode 3. And thank you all for watching The Crit House.